The times where people ignore the red flags and say, let's just keep pushing, those are the times where you fail. The majority of things that we're buying are created by men. You always learn more from your failures than you do your success.
The person who wrote to me said that they worked on the set of It Ends With Us, okay? And that the villain in this entire story is not Blake Lively. It's not Justin Baldoni, but it is Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan started the fire!
Allegedly. Don't gag order or sue me, Ryan Reynolds. Okay, I don't want to be involved in your drama. I'm just telling my audience what I was told. He goes into Blake Lively's trailer and they have an argument. All of the production assistants overheard.
Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, long celebrated as Hollywood's golden couple for their humor and seemingly inseparable bond, have unexpectedly found themselves caught in a storm far from the lighthearted charm they usually share on social media. What began as a heated disagreement on Blake's film set has spiraled into a full-blown legal battle that has not only dragged Ryan into the mess as her husband, but also attracted the outspoken attention of political commentator Candace Owens. Though not a Hollywood insider, Candace is well known for her bold views on politics and cultural controversies, and she made her stance in this case crystal clear by siding with Blake's co-star Justin Baldoni and even going so far as to label Ryan Reynolds the true villain behind the drama. A statement shocking enough to intrigue fans and critics alike, since it is rare for political figures to wade into Hollywood scandals and even rarer for them to directly accuse one of the industry's most beloved actors. Yet Candace has never been one to hold back. When her name surfaced in Blake and Ryan's court filing on February 26, something she stumbled across, casually while scrolling through Hollywood gossip, she found herself suddenly and unwillingly entangled in their lawsuit, despite having no formal role in it, included simply because she dared to voice the truth as she saw it. Instead of losing her cool, Candace handled it with humor, joking that being dragged by two A-list stars into a multi-million-dollar case was like receiving a Christmas gift and proof that she had hit a nerve. But of course, the media rushed to frame her as the villain, painting her as if she were stirring trouble. In reality, her reputation for calling out hypocrisy was exactly why she had been pulled into the mess, because Blake and Ryan didn't appreciate someone dismantling their carefully crafted victim narrative. Their attempt to make Candace the bad guy only backfired, as contradictions in their own lawsuit became glaring, leaving Candace front and center as their downfall unfolded. Blake's public relations maneuver, meant to frame Baldoni as the antagonist, collapsed spectacularly. Instead, audiences turned against her and recognized that the case seemed less about justice and more about control. This led Blake to make a desperate legal move by asking the court to keep certain evidence hidden. Judge Allen in New York instructed both sides to submit a proposed protective order on March 10. Standard practice in large cases where sensitive financial documents or private communications are involved. But Blake's legal team pushed far beyond the usual request, demanding not only the normal safeguards but also an unusual attorney's eyes only clause. This meant that even Baldoni himself, the defendant in this staggering $400 million case, would be barred from viewing some of the evidence against him, leaving only lawyers with access. Blake's side justified the move as necessary to protect third parties, such as Taylor Swift, from harm by keeping private messages sealed. Critics quickly pointed out how odd this was, since Taylor had no connection to the lawsuit at all, making her name's inclusion look like little more than an excuse to hide damaging evidence, especially since Blake herself had no problem leaking private texts when it worked to her advantage, such as when she fed confidential messages to the New York Times. Her sudden obsession with privacy reeked of hypocrisy. Baldoni's lawyers wasted no time highlighting this, arguing that Blake wasn't shielding innocent parties, but rather manipulating what the public could see by cherry-picking evidence to suit her narrative, while suppressing anything that might harm her image. This very hypocrisy was what Candace Owens seized on, calling it out bluntly and thereby enraging Blake and Ryan. The couple responded not by ignoring her, but by dragging her name directly into their court filings, even citing one of her tweets as supposed proof of a broader attack and going so far as to suggest she might be linked to Perez Hilton in a coordinated smear effort. These claims only made the couple look more desperate, as it became clear they were rattled not by any new evidence, but by Candace's sharp commentary, her exposure of contradictions they would have preferred stay hidden, and her ability to flip the narrative by simply speaking the truth. Blake, caught between leaking private texts to tarnish Baldoni and demanding legal secrecy to shield herself, began to look increasingly fraudulent. She claimed to be traumatized, yet Ryan casually joked about the lawsuit, and above all, they seemed terrified of voices like Candace's that refused to be silenced. Candace hadn't leaked messages, manufactured evidence, or filed manipulative legal requests. She had simply spoken facts. Yet those facts alone were enough to send Blake and Ryan spiraling into a full-blown meltdown. Candace roasted the lawsuit on her platform, exposed the contradictions, and forced Blake and Ryan, two of Hollywood's most powerful stars, into the absurd position of treating a single tweet as a courtroom threat, a twist that revealed just how shaken they were by her refusal to play along with their narrative. Blake's legal team argued that keeping private messages under wraps was necessary to protect third parties, even name-dropping Taylor Swift as a reason. But the problem was obvious. Taylor had absolutely nothing to do with the case. It looked like Blake was using her name as a convenient shield to justify hiding evidence. The kicker, of course, was that Blake had no issue leaking confidential messages when it served her narrative, handing over private texts to the New York Times. Yet now suddenly, she was obsessed with privacy. Baldoni's lawyers immediately seized upon this, pointing out that Blake wasn't interested in protecting innocent people at all, but in controlling what the public was allowed to see, cherry-picking evidence so that only information favorable to her side went public while anything damaging to her image stayed hidden. The protective order was less about safeguarding third parties and more about salvaging her reputation. And this was precisely what Candace Owens called out so bluntly that it dragged her into the mess. By exposing the contradiction, Candace left Blake and Ryan furious. Instead of letting it slide, they retaliated by dragging Candace's name into the lawsuit, even including one of her tweets in their court filing, a move that revealed just how rattled they were by her commentary. Since they knew she had spotted the truth they were desperate to bury, Blake's team even went further, trying to link Candace to Perez Hilton as if the two were secretly collaborating to smear them. That suggestion only made the situation look more desperate, because what Blake really wanted was to control the media, manipulate public opinion, and maintain her image as a Hollywood victim. But in pushing so hard, she exposed herself as a fraud, someone who would leak private texts to destroy Baldoni's reputation, then pivot and beg the court to hide her own messages when they posed a threat to her image. Someone who claimed trauma in public while her husband Ryan cracked jokes about the lawsuit, and someone who, when confronted by critics like Candace, turned to legal intimidation in an attempt to silence them. Yet Candace's only so-called crime was telling the truth. She did what she always does, called out hypocrisy, exposed contradictions, and dismantled the carefully crafted story of people who tried to silence her. By roasting the lawsuit on her podcast and openly pointing out how Blake and Ryan were attempting to rewrite reality to fit their own narrative, Candace proved just how fragile their strategy really was. Even a single tweet from Candace sent Blake's legal team into panic mode. They weren't terrified of new evidence emerging, or even the lawsuit's potential outcome. Their biggest fear was that Candace had pieced together the contradictions and refused to be quiet about them. So instead of ignoring her, they dragged her words into official filings, inadvertently proving just how insecure they were. Think about what this means. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, two of Hollywood's wealthiest and most powerful figures, with teams of PR and legal experts at their disposal, were so shaken by a single tweet from a political commentator that they felt compelled to cite it in court. Their argument boiled down to the claim that Candace was spreading misleading accusations, a charge dripping with irony. Since Blake herself had been the one leaking private texts to the media, and now she was accusing others of misinformation, the contradiction was so absurd it almost felt like satire. But it didn't stop there. Blake's team also tried to convince the court that Candace and Perez Hilton were somehow plotting together in a media attack, as if ordinary criticism couldn't possibly exist without being part of some grand conspiracy. Candace had a field day with the accusation, laughing it off, mocking the absurdity of the claim, and denying any connection to Baldone or his lawyers. She ridiculed the idea that she was part of a secret scheme, and in doing so, she highlighted once again how desperate and insecure Blake and Ryan had become, exposing just how much their carefully maintained Hollywood image had unraveled in the face of unfiltered truth.
That the villain in this entire story is not Blake Lively, it's not Justin Baldoni, but it is Ryan Reynolds.
It's not. He told us that Justin Baldoni claims she tried to take over his movie because she has a history of saying, okay, I'll be the star, but what I secretly want to do is direct it and edit it and produce it. I want all the roles for me and only me. I want full control because I am a controlling bully. That Justin Baldoni, ultimately, by the time they got to the premiere, was mandated by Blake Lively to spend the night in the basement away from his co-stars and didn't even get to see the final cut of his own movie because Blake Lively insisted that she be the one